Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmedi Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavadvyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Vasudevendra Yogindram Natva Jnana Pradam Gurum Mumukshunam hitarthaya Tattvabodha vidhiyate. Page 18. Karana shariram kim anirvachya anadi avidya rupam shariradvayasya karanamatram sada swarupa ajnanam nirvikalpakarupam Yadasti tat karana shariram. The causal body is avidya rupam karana shariram. The causal body is of the nature of ignorance. As I said, it is not body in the normal sense, but it is body or shariram in the derivative sense. Shiryate iti shariram, that which is subject to disintegration, which is perishable, is called shariram in a derivative sense, and inasmuch as ignorance also is perishable, destructible in the wake of knowledge, therefore, derivatively, ignorance can also be called shariram. When it comes to ignorance or jnanam, shariram doesn't mean the body in the conventional sense. Shariram is that which is subject to being destroyed, which is perishable. And ignorance being perishable in the wake of knowledge, it can be in a secondary sense called shariram. So, karana shariram avidya rupam. The causal body is of the nature of ignorance. We discussed yesterday that there is ignorance in our life. That we are born ignorant of ourselves as well as ignorant of the true nature of the world. And we also said that this ignorance is not merely absence of knowledge, but this ignorance brings about false knowledge or false perception. Just as in case of the rope snake, that the ignorance of the rope is there, at the same time that ignorance brings about the projection of the snake. Thus this ignorance has two aspects. One is what they call the avaranam or veiling, other is what is called the projection. So, avaranam and vikshepa, veiling and projection. Thus, in case of the rope snake, not knowing the rope is one aspect, and seeing the rope as snake is another aspect. So, this is the kind of ignorance that makes us project what is not there. That, as we say, it is called aviveka, or it is called adhyasa, adhyaropa, superimposition. And thus, there is this adhyasa or superimposition in our life. Taking one thing to be quite contrary to what it is, this is what is there in our life. Taking non-self to be the self, and taking self to be limited. Thus, in this discussion, we are seeing how Atma is described as Sthula, Sukshma, Karana, Sharirat, Vyatiriktaha, the one who is distinct from the gross, subtle, and the causal bodies. So, when we analyze, it becomes clear that the gross body cannot be I, the subtle body cannot be I, and still we take the body to be ourselves. So thus there is a superimposition, a projection of selfness upon the body-mind complex. So what is non-self is taken to be the self. Again, the attributes of this non-self are superimposed upon the self. So when we superimpose the Atmatvam, the idea of I upon the body-mind complex, then body is taken to be the self. The mind is taken to be self. Therefore, it becomes as important and as dear and as important as a self. Therefore, such preoccupation of the body and our personality because it is taken to be the self. And then, all the limitations of this personality are superimposed upon the self, and therefore, I take myself to be a mortal being. In fact, mortality is the nature of the body. The body is subject to birth and death, and on account of identification of the body, I take myself to be subject to birth and death. The mind is limited, intellect is limited, limited in capacity, limited in knowledge, limited in every way. And all those limitations are superimposed upon I, the self, and thus I view myself also as a limited being. Thus, there is a reason why the sense of limitation arises, or I have a sense of limitation about myself. There is a reason. And Vedanta explains the reason this way, that the attributes of the non-self are superimposed upon the self. And therefore, the limitations of non-self are taken to be the limitations of myself. If I could be comfortable with limitations of myself, if I would be comfortable taking myself to accepting myself to be a limited being, then there would be no problem. But I cannot stand that. I cannot accept that I am limited. So it's such an ironical situation that I see myself as a limited being and I cannot accept myself as a limited being. So every time I see myself as a limited being, there is an impulse to become free from that limitation. And that impulse gives rise to a desire. So every desire ultimately is desire in one way or the other to become free from the sense of limitation. What form that desire takes will depend upon what my imagination is about what will make me free. But what I want is just become free from limitation. No, this is not a legitimate desire. There are legitimate desires and they can be fulfilled or they will be fulfilled by appropriate effort, but this is not a legitimate desire. Desire on my part to be free is not a legitimate desire because free I already am. Like the 10th man, searching for the 10th man, and therefore that search can never be fulfilled because the one who is searching for is the 10th man. And similarly also I am searching for freedom. I am searching for happiness which happens to my own self. I am really searching for my own self, and that search will never come to an end. I will always keep on searching. The very search for the 10th man is a denial of the 10th man. Therefore, as long as there is a conclusion that the 10th man is lost, so long he can never be found. Somebody is to come along and say that, fellows, how do you know that one of you is lost? So we counted them. Show me how you counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. See, there are 9 only. I'll show you where the 10th man is. Where is he? Count again. And be alert, vigilant. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Where is the 10th boy? You are the 10th boy. So thus, this needs to be told. That is the reason why a teacher is required. Because as long as these boys have concluded that the 10th boy is lost, so long it will never occur to them that what I am searching for is myself, because the conclusion is that the 10th boy is lost. And therefore, someone else is required to show the fallacy of that conclusion. And there is a methodology of how the fallacy can be shown. And the methodology is to make that person count in this particular case. So just declaring that the 10th boy also will not work right away, because you won't understand how can I be. So there is a methodology of communicating to him that you are the 10th boy. And that is by making him count. And thus he counts up to 9. And now he is all faith and all devotion for this person who says that I will show you where the 10th man is. And thus he is ready to listen to him. In him there is Shraddha, Bhakti, all these qualifications are there. His mind also enjoys a focus, Samadhanam is there, and is told, you are the 10th man. And so that is why the problem being what it is in our life, inasmuch as on my part there is a conclusion that I am a limited being, I have no occasion to question that conclusion, because whatever I do is all based on that conclusion. Therefore, I need somebody to question or make me question that very conclusion. That what is the reason why I feel a sense of limitation? To show. And this is the way to analyze that there is this gross body, subtle body, causal body. Look, you are not there, but on account of identification with them, you take yourself to be a limited being. And therefore, there is a reason why the sense of limitation arises. And that reason is this identification with anatma or non-self. Now it becomes clear to me. Why do I take myself to be subject to birth and death? Because I take the body to be myself. Why do I take myself to be an ignorant being? Because I take the intellect to be myself. Why do I take myself as a limited being? Because I take this personality, the mind, etc. as myself. Why do I feel small, limited? Because the personality with which I am identified is small, is limited. Thus I understand why I feel the way I feel about myself. And when I see that my feelings about myself are not valid, when I see the mechanism of how the sense of limitation arises, then I can understand it's not enough to say that you are limitless. Suppose I am told you are limitless, no. But right now I feel limited. And unless someone shows me how the sense of limitation arises, I cannot let it go. Then I will add limitlessness over the limitedness that is there. Suppose you say that you are limitless, then I take myself with what I am, plus I somehow imagine some limitlessness. And all that needs to be done is to drop that sense of limitation. So it's a process of negation of what I am not. Negation of the notions that I entertain about myself. But I should understand how these notions arose in the first place. And that is avidya or ajnanam. So avidya is that which can be dispelled by avidya. Ajnanam is that which can be dispelled by jnanam. So that which is subject to being dispelled by knowledge is called ignorance. But his ignorance is not merely the absence of knowledge, but it also involves another element, namely the projection, meaning it creates false knowledge or false perception. Therefore, not just the ignorance, but then this false perception is the problem in our life. When we are fast asleep, that as we'll see, there is ignorance all right, but the false knowledge is not there. Therefore, there is no sense of limitation there. As soon as we wake up, then this identification happens, and thus we suffer from a sense of limitation. And that is the cause of everything. Cause for what? Sharira dvayasya karanamatram. Vedanta explains that the whole universe is a product of ignorance. The desire itself is a product of ignorance. As we said, the desire behind every desire is to become free. And when I am already free, then the desire to be free just doesn't make sense. When I am already a complete being, the desire to be complete doesn't make sense, but still it is there. I am already the 10th man and still I am searching for the 10th man. It doesn't make sense, but it is so. Why? Because I do not know who I am. I do not know that I am the 10th man, and then I take myself to be some 9th man or something and search for the 10th man. Now, thus the desire arises, desire to be free from limitation. And we must then have the necessary vehicle to express that desire. For desire to occur, we require a mind. And for fulfilling desire, then we need an intellect also which can think of how to fulfill that desire. What is the nature of action that is required? All of the deliberation should take place in the intellect. So mind desires, mind is a fancy. Then intellect gives justification and necessary information. And then we require the organs of action to perform the action. Thus we require the whole subtle body and the gross body in order to fulfill the desire and experience the results of our action. So we require the organs of perception and the mind to experience the result of the action. Therefore it is said, Sharira dvayasya karanamatram. This ignorance is the only cause. There is no other cause other than ignorance for both the Sharira, gross body, as well as subtle body. As we said, for fulfilling any, not only gross body, but all the gross body, the entire universe is created in order to fulfill the desire. So sometimes we do point out, what does it take to fulfill one desire? I want to eat one chapati, just one desire. What does it take to fulfill the desire for one chapati? No big deal, just go to kitchen, make a chapati. Lot of rice, wheat flour is there, and then take a rolling pin, and whatever, you take that, the platform, rolling pin, do that. And then there is the, skillet, whatever you call it, and then on that you make this chapati. But then how many things are required? You require wheat flour. Then you say, where did it come from? From the store. It came from perhaps a flour mill, and the wheat came from the field. And again, it requires such an effort to grow that wheat, And so you require the seeds, and you require the soil, you require manure, you require water, you require rain, you require sun, you require for the wheat to be. And what all you require for the fuel to be there, and for all what you require for the rolling pins and other things to be there, you find that you require the whole universe really for one chapati. For one cup of tea, you need the whole universe. Nothing less than that. And thus we can say that this universe is the result of my desire, literally. So avidya, kama, karma. Ignorance causes in me a sense of limitation. That causes kama, the desire to become free from limitation, and that desire wants it to be fulfilled through karma or the action. So action is always prompted by desire. A desire is prompted by a sense of lack, and sense of lack is the product of ignorance. So this is how the gross body and the subtle body are required. Subtle body to entertain desire, to know how to fulfill the desire, to plan what actions to perform. All of that you require the mind, you require the intellect. Then you require the organs of action to perform the action. then you require organs of perception to experience the result of your action. And you require a gross body to house this subtle body. Thus, Shariradvayasya Karanamatram. Understand that ignorance, that's why it's called causal body. Because ignorance is the cause of the other two bodies, the gross and the subtle bodies. And as we said, in fact, it is the cause for the entire gross and the subtle creation. Add up all the desires of all the living beings and you have the whole creation. Karamatram sada swarupa jnanam. As we said, it is ignorance of one's own nature. Not just plain ignorance, but ignorance that brings about the wrong perception, wrong notion, wrong judgment, wrong conclusions. Other two adjectives are also there. Anirvachya anadi avidyarupam. See, this avidya, ignorance. Swamiji, who created ignorance? Why is there ignorance? Now it becomes very frustrating to discover that there is ignorance and that is the culprit. That's what is doing all this. And so Swamiji, all this suffering in my life is due to ignorance. Why is ignorance created? Answer is, ignorance is not created, it is always there. Anadi, it does not have a beginning, it doesn't have a cause. Only that which is a cause can have beginning. But ignorance itself is the cause of everything, but then it doesn't have a cause. Ignorance is the cause of this creation, as we just saw. But ignorance itself doesn't have a cause. Why ignorance? There is no answer to the question, why ignorance? It is. When did all this begin? When did I is Brahman. So the whole idea is that it is Brahman that is really undergoing this whole cycle of birth and desire and action. Who is ignorant? Brahman is ignorant. Of what? Sat Swarup, one's own nature. So who entertains desire? Brahman entertains desire. Who performs action? Brahman performs action. Who gets the result of the action? Brahman gets them. And therefore, you require a body to experience the result of the action. If the actions are not exhausted in this lifetime, take another embodiment and so the next birth. So in the process of experiencing a result, you perform other actions and create other results and create other embodiment. And this is how the whole cycle of birth and death is going on. Since when? So when did Brahman become ignorant? And why should Brahman be ignorant? Brahman is, who says, Brahman is the nature of knowledge. It will be told, Satchidananda. Brahman is Chit Swarupa, Ananda Swarupa. Why should there have ignorance? How can there be ignorance in Brahman which is of the nature of knowledge? How can it be? How can there be darkness in sun? But darkness is not, I don't see the sun not because there is darkness in the sun, but sun is covered by a cloud. It is not that even sun is covered by cloud, my eyes are covered by cloud. Similarly, it is not that Brahman is covered by ignorance, but my eyes, my intellect is covered by ignorance. But Swami, why? There is no answer to the question why. It's very frustrating. This question occurs out of frustration. Why? And when the answer is that there is no reason why, it becomes more frustrating. And sometimes we feel that these people are all evading answers, which may be so. But Vedanta will only say this, suppose you know why, so what? Suppose you knew why, it still will not change the situation. You still have to deal with what it is. Suppose I came to know why I became ignorant. Nobody becomes ignorant, because when can you say becoming ignorant? So if ignorance comes, what was there before ignorance? Knowledge must have been there. And so, darkness cannot come when the light is there. When light is there, darkness cannot stage a comeback. If you say that ignorance has come, That means before ignorance, or when ignorance was not there, there must have been knowledge. Ignorance cannot come where the knowledge is there, just as darkness cannot come where the light is there. Light can come where the darkness is, but darkness cannot come where the light is. Therefore, ignorance cannot have a beginning. If you ask this question, when did this 10th boy, when did he become ignorant? You say, when did his ignorance begin? So when he started counting, then his ignorance began. Is it so? Did he know before counting that he was the 10th boy? At no time did he know that he was the 10th man. Is it not so? If he knew, then there is no reason why he should take himself to be someone other than that. He never knew he was the 10th boy. That means that he was always ignorant. So ignorance doesn't have a beginning. Meaning it has no anadi. It doesn't have adi or the beginning. And again, adi also means the cause. It doesn't have a cause. It is causeless. Itself is a cause of everything, but it has no cause. When did this process begin? There is no beginning. But when did it happen first time, Swamiji? No, there is no first time. It is an ongoing process. So these answers are perhaps not satisfactory to the people, or they are frustrating the people, but these are the answers. Because if all these things was real, then these questions also are valid. But if you ask this question, Swamiji, when did this rope become snake? Why did rope become snake? And when did the rope become snake? If rope had become snake, then the question why and when would be valid. Since rope has not become snake, inasmuch as snake is merely a notion in my mind. Therefore, the question why and when have no validity because it is simply a notion, a projection, an imagination, an appearance. Similarly, all the questions that we ask, when did I become ignorant? When did I become limited? When did I become a jiva? But you are not a jiva. You are not ignorant. You are not limited. If you were limited, then the question when perhaps would have been valid, or why. But this is a question about something which is not there. Like saying, that in the dream we had a transaction and you borrow $100 from me. Next day I wake up and ask you, give me $100 back. Which $100 are you talking about? Well, you took from me last night. When? In my dream. And so that which is not a reality, that the questions of why, when, etc. also have no validity. But this will become clear when our true nature becomes clear. Then when the wise person recognizes himself, it is not that he says, now I am free. He recognizes that I was always free. Now that I have become limitless, I was always limitless. Meaning that the sense of limitation was a notion only. And for notion, there is no why and no when. But it is anadi, avidya rupam. Avidya is ignorant, anadi is beginningless, causeless. They call it uncaused cause. This is the way to say. Uncaused cause. It's the cause of everything, itself not caused. Anirvachya, indefinable, there's another thing. What is the nature of this ignorance? What is it? Can you define it? If a question is asked, what is the nature of the rope snake? Can you define it? Is the snake there? Can you say it is? Or you say it is not? So about the rope snake, we can neither say it is, nor can we say it is not. Why can we not say? We cannot say that it is. Because if the snake were real, then it would always be there. When I show a torchlight there, then also the snake should continue to be there if the snake is really there. When I show the torchlight, the snake disappears. Which means it is not, you cannot say that it is, because had it been there, it would not disappear. So would you say it is not there? See the rope snake, would you say it is? If it is, then it would not disappear even when you show the torchlight. Then it's okay, I say it is not. You cannot say it is not, because had it not been there, you would not perceive it. The fact that you see or experience it, therefore you cannot say it is not. And when you show the torchlight, it doesn't remain there, therefore you cannot say it is. And what is it, Swami? See, what the Vedantin says is this. You cannot say that it is, you cannot say it is not. He doesn't say what is, So the snake, you can't say it is not. Why? Because otherwise you won't see it. You can't say it is, because otherwise it would not disappear when you show the torchlight. So then what is it? We cannot say that it is or it is not. This is called anirvachya. So you can't define it either is or is not. That which defies any categorization. That which cannot be categorized as either is or is not. Sad asad bhyam anirvachaniyam. Sat cannot be said to be is, asat cannot be said it is not, and from both of them anirvachaniyam. So therefore, just as that rope snake cannot be categorized, cannot define whether it is or it is not, and it is a product of ignorance, and therefore ignorance also cannot be said to be is or is not. If ignorance was real, then the question when and why would have been valid. But you can't say ignorance is, nor can you say ignorance is not. If ignorance were not, the world which is product of ignorance would not have been there. If ignorance was, then it would never be negated or would never dispelled, but it does get dispelled in the wake of knowledge. Inasmuch as ignorance disappears in the wake of knowledge, we cannot say that ignorance is. Inasmuch as we feel a sense of limitation, there is this universe, there is this birth and death, there is this suffering, therefore we cannot say ignorance is not. So, therefore, we cannot say it is or it is not. This is called anirvachya, called indefinable. You cannot define, you cannot categorize. So, anirvachya, all questions that can possibly arise in satsang are all answered right away, because all these questions would arise. But then, Vedanta itself, anirvachya, anadi, avidya rupam, they are all standard terms. As I said, when you study any bhashyas or tikas, you will come across these terms. They will simply write this, taking for granted that the reader knows what all these terms mean. Anirvachya, anadi, avidya rupam, shariradvayasya, karanamatram sada, swarupa jnanam, ignorance of one's own nature. Why is it there? It is there. How come I do not know myself? I don't know myself. How come I take myself wrongly? That's what it is. And so, we have to begin from there. We have to deal with that. Nirvikalpaka rupam, of the nature of non-differentiation. Vikalpa, nirvikalpa. So, kalpa means kalpana, projection. Or vikalpana, various ways of projection. Nirvikalpa, free from projection or duality. So, of the nature of nirvikalpaka, free from duality or free from differentiation. It says here, non-differentiation. Meaning ignorance of one cannot be differentiated from ignorance of the other. Ignorance is ignorance, and therefore your ignorance, my ignorance, in basic nature it cannot be differentiated. Or this ignorance of the causal body has its primary expression or its most predominant and deep sleep state. As we will see later on, in the deep sleep state is characterized by ignorance. And in ignorance, all differentiations vanish. All differentiations are the product of ignorance. The cause is ignorance, from this all differentiations come, and all differentiations merge back into ignorance. Therefore, in ignorance itself, the differentiations, the things cannot be differentiated. Thus, when we are fast asleep, at that time, the differentiation of I and mine, subject and object, all these differentiations disappear. They all get merged into the cause. So, our personality, consisting of this gross and subtle body, and in subtle body also all our desires, memories, all of these are there in the waking state and to some extent in the dream state also. In the deep sleep state, the entire personality becomes undifferentiated. Therefore, you cannot differentiate. Just as in the darkness. Right now we can differentiate all the people sitting here and various other objects in this hall. But if darkness was set in, if it was pitch darkness, then all differentiations would disappear. If darkness came here, then I could not differentiate one from the other. So it is in the presence of light that things can be differentiated. When darkness comes, all differentiations disappear. Similarly also, all differentiations disappear in ignorance. Thus, in the deep sleep state, there is no differentiation between the subject and object. No differentiation between one object and another object. So, that is why it said, Nirvikalpa Rupam. Where all the vikalpana, all the projections or all the duality gets merged, remains undifferentiated. That's the nature of cause anyway. Just take the cause such as the lump of gold from which we make various ornaments. If all ornaments are melted and they go back into lump, then in lump now the ornaments can be differentiated. All the ornaments are potentially there in the lump of gold, but then we cannot differentiate them. So that is the nature of cause where the effect cannot be differentiated. Like in a lump of clay, various spots and pains are there, but you cannot differentiate them. Similarly also, in ignorance, the potential of entire creation is there, but it cannot be differentiated. So therefore it is called avidya, it is called avyakta, it is called, so avyakta means so unmanifest, where everything becomes, from manifest becomes unmanifest. So these different terms are used. Ajnanam, avidya, avyakta, avyakruta. Avyakruta, where all differentiations are gone. Avyakta, where there is no manifestation. So these kind of terms also we will come across. Ignorance is where there is no differentiation of the effects, where all the effects have become unmanifest or merged. So ignorance is called avyaktam, unmanifest. It is called avyakrutam, undifferentiated. It is called prakriti, the primordial cause. It is called maya, because it has a projecting power. So these are various terms used to denote ignorance. Sometimes you come across the word prakriti. Prakriti means primordial cause. So sometimes it is called prakriti. Sometimes it is called maya. Maya means projecting power, because ignorance has projecting power. Sometimes it's called avyakta, unmanifest, because just as all the ornaments become unmanifest in the cause, in the lump of gold, and so also the whole universe of names and forms becomes unmanifest. Sometimes it's called avyakrita, undifferentiated. Just as all the names and forms cannot differentiate in the cause, so also the universe of names and forms cannot differentiate it in ignorance, which is cause. Therefore, avyaktam, avyakritam, prakriti, maya, avidya, ajnanam, these are the various terms that are used. Each term has its own meaning, but it amounts to the same thing. Each term amounts to the primary cause. So it's nirvikalpa rupam yadasti tat karana shariram. So ignorance such as this is called the causal body. Gross body, subtle body, causal body. The important thing is that I am neither gross body, nor subtle body, nor causal body. So, this analysis of what we call shariratraya, or the threefold sharira, threefold bodies is given. to enable us to see how we are different from the three bodies. So the definition, Atma Kaha, what is the nature of self? Sthula, Sukshma, Karana Sharirat Vyatirikta, the one that is distinct from the gross, subtle and causal bodies. So, while discussing gross body, we analyze how I, the self, cannot be gross body. Because the body, gross body here, it was not there before its birth, will not be there after death. Whereas Atma must necessarily be consistently there. There cannot be that the self is not. The self is ever existent. Self is immortal. Self is eternal. As we were saying last night that self of the Atma there must necessarily be a continuity of self or existence or consciousness. Consciousness doesn't die, is not born. Najayate mriyate va kadachit. There is neither birth nor death. Because if there was birth or death in the self, if there is no continuity, then there is no past and there is no future. If there is no past, then we cannot explain the present. The present cannot be explained unless we accept the past. And the future cannot be explained unless we accept the present. As we said again, if we do not accept the past of the self, then whatever action, then right now what I am cannot be explained because there was no past, no history, and therefore I am stuck with something for which I am not responsible. I am stuck with a body, stuck with my life, stuck with this parent, Swamiji, stuck with this spouse, stuck with... Why am I stuck with all of this? The answer is your karma. That's the answer. But if I had no history, I never existed before the birth here, that means that there was no history, I did not do anything, then why was I born? Why was I born like this? Swami, why do I have brown skin? If there is no past or no karma, then you cannot explain the present. That means that I am stuck with the result of something which I have not done. And during this lifetime also, many actions are being performed. If at the end, by death, this life comes to an end, existence comes to an end, then there is no consequence of what all I have done, and therefore I do not get the benefit of what all I have done, or I get away with what all I have done, which is not right. Then there is no fairness, there will be no order. There is an order in the creation. Therefore, there is this law of cause and effect. That we know that every effect should have an appropriate cause, and every cause should create also an appropriate effect. But if we do not accept the past, then we accept there is this present, which is an effect, which doesn't have a cause. In the present, I perform various actions, meaning create the cause, and there is no future, then it doesn't have an effect. So, by not accepting the past and the future of the self, we are in fact violating the very law of cause and effect. And in that case, there will be no cause, no effect, no vyavastha, no order. If there is no order, the universe will come to an end right away. The fact that the universe is functioning is because there is an order. And therefore, in order to accept that order, we have to accept the past, future. We have to accept that the self must necessarily be there all the time. It must be eternal. It cannot have birth, it cannot have death. But the body did not exist before its birth. It is not there after death also. The body does not deserve to be self. It undergoes various modifications. Self is free from modifications. It is all the time changing. The self is changeless. It is impure, made of all impure substances. This body in Viveka Chudamani is analyzed in great detail as to what all stuff is there in the body. And when something comes out of the body, you don't want to do anything with it. As long as inside, so long it's all fine. Once it comes out, it is impure. Whether it is, whatever it is, comes from any opening it comes out, it's all impure. That means his body is nothing but a story of all impurities. Self is ever pure, and therefore The body cannot be the self. This is how to enable us to understand how the body, I cannot be the body cannot be the self. This description of gross body was given. The subtle body also I cannot be. Subtle body also is not there in the deep sleep state. It wakes up again, therefore it is also subject to appearance and disappearance, which cannot be the case of the self. It must consistently be there. Sometimes subtle body shines, sometimes does not shine. There is no consistency. There is also constantly changing. Is also limited. And thus, subtle body also I cannot be. It is also the object of my awareness. The awarer must be different from what is aware of. I am aware of my thoughts. I am aware of my sense organs. I am aware of my memories. I am aware of my knowledge. I am aware of my emotions. I am aware of all of this. And I, who is aware of them, cannot be those things, and therefore I must be different from the subtle body also. There am I the ignorance? Ignorance also I cannot be, because there is an awareness of ignorance also. I don't know myself. At least after all the discussion, this has become clear that I don't know myself. That I know that I do not know. When I do not know something, I know that I do not know. I know that I do not know the Chinese language. I know that I do not know millions of things. What I know is precious little. What I do not know is, you ask me, Swami, what is this tree? I don't know. What is this leaf? I don't know. What is this flower? I don't know. What is the insect? I don't know. But I know that I don't know. That means that ignorance also, there is a knowledge of ignorance also. Ignorance also is illumined by the self. I am aware of ignorance, and aware is always different from what is aware of. Therefore, the causal body also I cannot be. Thus, Shariratra Sthula Sukshma Karana Sharirat Vyatirikta. So, all this description was to help us understand that I, the self, is Vyatirikta, distinct from the gross, subtle, and causal bodies. So, this one section is done. What was the next description? You see, you have to open the page 12, just to remind what is the definition of the self. Open the page 12. There's the question of Atma Kaha. What is the nature of self? Sthula, Sukshma, Karana, Sharirat, Vyatirikta, distinct from the gross, subtle, and causal bodies. Panchakoshati San, one who transcends the five koshas. Avasthatraya Sakshi, one who is the witness of the three avasthas, one who is the witness of the three states of awareness. So that is what now the author proceeds to discuss. Avasthatraya Sakshi. See, we don't have much interest in worrying about gross body, although we spend a lot of time discussing the gross body and subtle body and causal body. Basically, we are interested in the self. And all this discussion was to become clear that that cannot be the self. The self that I am is different from that. This is Atma, Anatma, Viveka. Viveka or distinction or discrimination between the self and non-self. So Tattvabodha, the discriminative knowledge of the self. Now to help us again discriminate between the self and non-self, the second prakriya, the second method is avasthatraya sakshi, that the self is a sakshi, the witness of the three states, waking, dream and deep sleep state. Then panchakoshatita, that also will be taken up. But why is avasthatraya? So even though in this passage, first is the sthula sukshma karana sharira direkta, that is discussed. Then second should be panchakoshatita. But skipping that, the author is discussing avasthatraya sakshi, self is the sakshi, the witness of three avasthas. Why is it so? That is because these three avasthas are related to the three bodies. The gross, subtle and causal bodies, and associated with each body is a specific avastha or the state of consciousness, waking, dream and deep sleep. Therefore, After discussing the three bodies, it is very convenient to discuss the three avasthas or three states. Because as we explained that the gross body is the one that has predominance in the waking state, the subtle body has predominance in the dream state, the causal body has predominance in the deep sleep state. And therefore, having discussed the three bodies, the author now proceeds to discuss the three states. On the page 19, this question is asked. Avasthatrayam kim? Avasthatrayam. So this trayam means this threefold. So avasthatrayam, what are the kim? Kim means what are the three states of experience, although avasthatrayam is a singular. It is, but then in translation, what are the three states of experience? Then the answer is given. Jagrat swapna sushuptyavasthaha. So these are the three states. Jagrat avastha, swapna avastha, sushuptyavastha. The state of Jagrat meaning waking, the state of Swapna means dream, and Sushupta means deep sleep state. So waking, dream and deep sleep, these are the three states. Why did this question arise in the first place? Avasthatrayam kim? What is this three avasthas? Or what is this three states of consciousness? Why did this question arise? Because earlier the statement was made, self is avasthatraya sakshi. So Atma was defined as the one who is sakshi or witness of the three states. Therefore the student wants to know, what are these three states? So the self can be known with reference to three states. Self can be known with reference to three bodies, therefore the three bodies are described. Again, self can be known with reference to three states, and therefore the three states are being described. So, therefore the question, what are the three states? Answer, waking, dream and deep sleep. So naturally the question will arise, what is waking state? So that's the next question. Jagradavasthaka. So what's the waking state? Then the answer is given. Shrotradi jnanendriyaihi shabdadi vishayaha jnayante iti yata sa jagradavastha sthula sharirabhimani atma vishvaha iti uchyate. Simple but nice definitions. Shrotradi jnanendriyahi shabdadi vishaya jnayante iti. So that state in which shabdadi vishayaha, the objects, sense objects such as shabdadi beginning from shabda. Shabda means sound. So as we've been saying, there are fivefold objects. Sound, touch, color, taste and smell. Shabda, sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha. These are the fivefold objects of the world. That's all the world consists of. What does the world consist of? Various sounds, various touches, various colors, which includes forms, various tastes and various smells. Do you know of any sixth thing? Suppose we say that the whole universe consists of just these five objects. Think about a sixth one. That will be interesting. Then that will be some new discovery. Then we can modify this Vedantic text also. But so far, there are these five things. Shabda, sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha. Shabda, sound, sparsha, the touch, rupa, the color and form, rasa, the taste, gandha, the smell. That's what the whole universe consists of. But Swami, there are chairs and tables. What about them? Well, they are all of the nature of... So anything that is seen by the eyes is all included in color, rupa. Anything that is heard by the ears is all shabda. Anything touched by the skin is all sparsha. Anything tasted by the tongue is all rasa. Smelled by the nose, it is gandha. There is no sixth object. If it is there, we are not aware of it. Because we are endowed with 5 organs of perception. Each organ of perception can perceive its respective object. And therefore, we say that there are 5-fold objects. 5-fold organs of perception, 5-fold objects. Nice model. Everything is 5. So, Shabdadi Vishaya Jnayante. All these objects of perception are known, are perceived by, are cognized by us. Jnana means cognition. That we cognize these objects. We cognize the sounds, touch, colors, taste, smell. All these objects are cognized by us. With what? Shrotradi Jnanendriyahi. By the Jnanendriyahi, by the organs of perception. There are karmendriya, as we'll see later on, that we already seen, jnanendriyani, karmendriyani. 2 sets of sense organs we have. Jnanendriyani, sense organs with which we gain jnana or knowledge. Karmendriyani, sense organs with which we perform karma or action. So, the organs of perception and organs of action. That's how they're translated. So, this is what is waking state? Waking state is that state in which the gross objects, the gross tangible objects of the world are cognized or perceived or experienced by the corresponding organs of perception. So where this transaction takes place is called the waking state. Right now is a waking state because with my organs of perception I perceive or cognize the various objects of the world. This is waking state. Sa jagrata avastha. That's all. Very simple definition. Or elsewhere in Panchikaranam, Indriyehi arthopalabdhihi jagaritam. A definition is given. Indriyehi arthopalabdhihi. When there is cognition of sense objects with sense organs, this is called the waking state. You know why is this kind of definition given? Because coming to think of it, the dream state is not really different, doesn't look like different from waking state. In the dream state also, we have similar transaction going on. Is it not so in the dream state also? When I am dreaming at least. When I wake up, then I realize it was dream. But when I am dreaming, then a similar pattern is there. There also, I am the subject and I am confronted with the world around me, that is object. And there is an interaction with the world. That I perceive the objects of the world and I respond with my organs of action. Thus, in the dream also, a similar pattern is there. So, what is the difference between the waking and the dream states? Because they look alike. So, this definition is meant to explain to us the distinction that obtains between the 2 states. That in the dream state also, there seem to be the same kind of smell and taste and touch and sound and whatever. And there also I am experiencing those objects with the senses that I have in the dream. And I have the similar experience of pleasure and pain in the dream also. And still, there is a great distinction. That in the dream state, the objects that I experience are not these objects. In the dream also, I see a sun, I see a moon, and I see all these various things, but they are not this sun and not this moon. In the dream also, I hear sounds. There also I see colors and forms. There also I taste things. There also I smell. There also I touch. But those objects are not the tangible objects that we have in the waking state. Then what are they? They are the objects that are projected by my mind. They are the product of the subjective creation. So, they are not these objective objects, meaning that the reality in the dream state is not objective reality, it is subjective reality. Therefore, this waking world is called Vyavaharika. It is Vyavaharikam Jagat, or the kind of reality that the waking world has is called Vyavaharika Satta, or objective reality. Meaning that in as far as the waking world is concerned, all of us have an access to this world equally. Therefore, what I perceive, the flower that I perceive, is the flower that you perceive. The sun that I see is the sun that you see. But in the dream, the flower that I see is not the flower that you see. In my dream, I see a sun, you don't have an access to that sun. S-O-N sun or S-U-N sun, whatever it is, you don't have access to that. And thus, dream is what we call pratibhashik satta, the subjective reality, a projection of my mind. Waking is the vyavaharika satta. It is objective reality. It is not a projection. You can say it is Ishvara Srushti, it is creation of Ishvara, creation of the Lord. Whereas dream is Jiva Srushti, it is creation of Jiva or creation of the individual being. That's the main difference. But Swami, there also I have organs of perception, there also I perceive, but they are not these organs of perception. The Upanishads explain how in the dream state this Jiva creates another body. So when he wants to pass on from the waking to the dream state, then he makes this body unconscious. This waking body is made unconscious and he creates a new body for the dream. Even though when we are in dream, we do not recognize this fact. But it is that the body obtaining the dream with which we gain dream experiences is not this body, it is a body that is created specially for dream. And therefore, the sense organs which we have in the dream also are the sense organs specifically or expressly created for dream. So there, the objects also are created by the mind, the sense organs also are created by the mind, the body also is created by the mind, and therefore, even though the pattern of experience in the dream and the waking state, the patterns appear to be similar, they are vastly different, inasmuch as the objects experienced in dream are not these objects. No, but Swami, I saw you last night. Yeah, but then that was not this Swami, because I was sleeping in my bed, You saw me perhaps in your home or someplace, and then I was not there. So when we wake up from the dream, there is no correlation. In the dream, we go with the friends, and we go to restaurants, we go to movie, and then, we enjoy ourselves. Next morning, I ask them, how did you find that food? It's what are you talking about? So, there is no agreement or concurrence as far as the dream is concerned. That means that the friends with whom I went to a movie in my dream were also created by me. Thus, to distinguish the waking state from the dream, or to distinguish dream state from the waking, this definition is given. Looks like a very simple definition, but Shrotradi Jnanendriyahi, by the sense organs beginning from Shrota, the faculty of hearing, Shabdadi Vishayaha, the various sense objects such as sound, etc., are jnayante, are known or are cognized. With the help of the presiding deities, we saw that every organ of perception has its own adhisthana devata or presiding deity. It is by the grace of that presiding deity that a given sense organ can function. Just thus, the organ of hearing has dik or quarters or directions as a presiding deity, and eyes of the sun, whatever, and our mind also, as that will be told later on. So by the anugraha, by the grace or the favor of the presiding deity, the respective sense organs function and they cognize the respective sense objects. This state is called the waking state. Okay, we'll continue. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.